Abhishek, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Hi, Ashu. I'm doing good. How are you? Thanks for having me here.
Abhishek, I'm doing very well. I say this often, and my team hates me for this, right? Is that I'm kind of looking forward and very excited about this conversation, right?
Same
And
here. Happy to
and
share.
and that's largely because of the great work that you've been doing at GoodDot, right? I think talking about plant-based meats, right? Talk about a variety of options that are happening, right? And the kind of research which is happening as far as this entire field is concerned is absolutely disruptive, right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to change the way we consume, right? And I think that makes it very, very exciting. I think, my belief has been, when I looked at it, when I heard it for the first time, right? My sense was, it's a fairly complicated play, which in a country like India is going to take forever to get accepted, right? But here you are, and here we are in the conversation where you are kind of changing that entire perception, right? So yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, Ashu. I think the need is very real, very credible. Unfortunately, it had been latent. Now
Right.
it is manifesting itself. So we knew it all along. I think the world knows India, that India, there's a huge tailwind for a plant-based
Right.
meat. And here we are. Yeah.
Interesting. Abhishek, before we dive into the session, right, you have a phenomenal background. We spoke about it, right, offline at a
Yeah.
personal level. But tell us a little more about your journey. I mean, you've been in the government service, right? Something which is extremely coveted. People can kill for that,
Yeah.
and you quit that, and then you started GoodDot, right? Tell me a little
Yeah.
more about it.
Yeah, Ashu, actually, it was both a very easy as well as a difficult,
Right.
choice for me.
Sure.
Difficult as for obvious reasons, you aspire. I come from Patna, in Bihar. Of course, people give a lot of importance to government job, the
Right.
stability and the reputation it brings to the entire family, I must say. So that was the biggest charm for a government service. Of course, the kind of platform you get, you can really make credible impact in whichever field you are. So
Right.
for me, that was the difficult part of leaving that, because I was happy in my service.
Right.
It was a great exposure for a young person at
Sure.
getting at a great government level position.
Right.
But having said that, it was easy for me, because if there's one thing that defines me is I'm an animal lover. I think
Right.
animals connect me to at a very deep level.
Right.
So there this stream was wherein I can get into a business where I can help animals by selling products which people like.
Right.
So there was no brainer for me, and I took the leap of faith, and God has been kind. Yeah.
Very interesting. Abhishek, when we talk about plant-based meats, when we talk about the entire work which is happening, right? What do you
Yeah.
expect? It's a What you expect is essentially a lot of capital which is going to be required, right? It's not an easy business to get into, right? And I think in India, it's like I said, right? We're very very early days, right? When it comes to the setting up labs, building this entire possibility of creating meats in labs, so on and so forth, right? And I think we also grapple with a lot of preconceived notions, right? When it comes to food. Uh, how did this journey started, and how did you choose? I mean, I understand you love animals, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
from that to doing this, right? How
Sure.
did that journey happen?
So incidentally, the seed of a need for plant-based meat in India, at least in our
Right,
society, was sowed in the year 2003 when I
right,
was in my final year of chemical engineering.
mhm,
So I came across a Dutch government-sponsored study on tissue culture-based meat.
right,
So here I was an ex-meat eater. At that time, I would consume meat, but I
right,
would also help animals. So this product would resolve a dilemma in the mind of an average consumer like me. So
sure,
that really sowed the seed of interest about this space.
right,
So, but I never thought of entering the business. I kept a tab on the space from a point of view of a avid future consumer. But
sure,
nothing moved in India for a good
right,
close to a decade. I
mhm,
did, various government job, within the country. And my brother Abhinav, who went to US to do his PhD in protein chemistry, I
right,
think we kept on exchanging notes what was happening in the western
right,
part. So finally, in 2013, we formed a team wherein we got people with different skill sets. We got some investors lined up,
right,
and we started to a plunge in this space. And
right.
it took us, good 3 odd years, wherein we could finally get to a product which we found to be the perfect fit for the Indian market. So we launched with our first product in 2017 after incorporation of GoodDot in 2016.
Right. Interesting. And what was that product, right? That
Yeah.
that you started with?
So the first product was we used the term called vegetarian meat. which was a shelf-stable format of chunks of mutton, or you can say lamb. It's a
Right.
goat meat product, which is the second most consumed meat in
Right.
India. So that was our first product we launched, and then thereafter we have added so many other products. Yeah.
Right. Now, Abhishek, tell me a little more, right? What's different in the consumer? I understand tissue culture, right? I mean, I understand, various facets of tissue culture, right? Tell me a little more about it, right? From a taste, texture standpoint, right? How is this product, different in that? I mean, are you a close, say, 80% of it? Are you I mean, you've been on both the sides, right? I mean, you've been a meat eater, and you can, for you to differentiate is so much more easier, right? Where
Yeah.
do you stand when it comes to, say, replacing the existing meat that we consume from a plant-based, tissue culture-based meat?
Sure, sure, sure. Ashu, as you know, earliest form of textured protein what India has been exposed to is the soy chunks.
Sure.
So, everyone worth his salt who's a meat eater will say that, of course, don't fool me. That's never a case of, it being a plant-based meat. But now what has happened, and this concept of plant-based meat is pretty phenomenally old. It's
Right.
a 2000 plus old history in China. When
Right.
the Chinese royalty, they converted to Buddhism, that was
Right.
the first time they wanted to have a plant-based product which tasted like meat. So,
Right.
because ahimsa is the tenet of Buddhism. Having
Right.
said that, tofu, tempeh, and seitan were the earliest form of plant-based meat.
Right.
But now, if you ask, the first product what we launched, we believe was around 70% being close to meat. If
Right.
you cook it in the right format, you can take it up to 80-85% closer to
Right.
meat. We have fooled so many people in the blind taste test because what we initially targeted was more about chunks of meat. You
Right.
cook it your own way, but we felt that people were probably not cooking it the way some people were not cooking it the way it should have been cooked. So we are
Right.
coming with more finished formats.
Right.
Now we have some very strong products lined up where I think the levels are 95%, if not 100, and they will be launched in the coming month, within a month. And we are like super excited about it, and that is going to be the real disruptor of meat in India.
Very interesting. Abhishek, I'd like to know more about the current SKU base that you have, right? Before I dive into talking more about the larger market which exists. And I mean, of course, the numbers are out there. India is one of the highest meat consuming nations. Of course, per capita wise, we're still lesser as
Yeah.
Western countries. But I mean, from a volume standpoint, we're fairly large, right? But before I dive into that, what's the SKU bucket right now? So from what you sort of started with, right, which is essentially a goat meat like product, right? And what
Yeah.
does it stand in?
So yeah, so we categorically, we have divided into two major streams. One is upstream product, which are chunks of meat, versatile. It's just like a chicken chunk or a mutton chunk, and you
Sure.
cook it the way you want to cook it. So that is the one of the base products. Apart from that, we have added now more ready to eat and ready to cook format. So
Right.
we are coming with a kit format like a curry kit. So everything is there in the box with the masala, with the gravy, as well as the chicken pieces. And you follow the instruction, you'll get a chicken curry in a
Right.
house in flat 15 minutes, 12
Right.
minutes. We are coming up with a keema, which we feel is sensational. I think in so many aspects, and as an ex-meter, I'm saying this is even better than a mutton keema. And
Right.
more in terms of price point, ease of making, and as well as the taste. So we have biryanis, we have tikkas, which are coming through. We also have, incidentally, a sister company, or rather a subsidiary company
Right.
called GoodDot Foods, which is having fast food outlets. So right now we have 4 outlets in Mumbai, 2 in Nepal, 1 in Delhi, and 3 in Udaipur. The plan is to roll out probably 40, 50 outlets in the next 6 to 8 months. So that's the plan for GoodDo.
Very interesting. We're going to talk about that separately, right? But
Yeah,
before we move into talking about more about the retail format, right?
sure.
Abhishek, tell me this, right? So, what is the landscape of the market, right? I mean, there's a lot of conversation which is happening, right?
Yeah,
There are a lot of people who are who turning vegan, right? There's a huge sensitivity which is coming in, right? But my sense is, when I look at it at a distance, right? Of course, while there are reports which say that this is happening and that is happening, right? I think there is a huge tentative audience, right? Which is not sure, right? So what's the market like, right? I mean, when you cut it, right? How do you see it, right? What's the India market? What's the global market? There's a lot of work happening in the global market as well, right? There are a lot of players there who are wanting to enter India. I think Next is very large, right? I think they're working a lot with Moong and they're working with a bunch of other things, right? But there's
yeah.
places like sort of the way you are sort of doing it, they're doing it internationally, right? And they've been funded fairly large, valued a couple of $1 billion now, right? What's happening
Which company, Ashu? Can you
next?
come again? Next.
Next, next.
Okay. Next. I think Singapore-based company.
It's US based.
Acha, next. Okay. Beyond Meat and Impossible are one of the bigger players in the
Okay.
space, which are US based companies. So,
Sure.
they are again, Beyond Meat is a decacorn. I think
Right.
somewhere closely followed by, I think, Impossible Foods. So they're
Right.
quite big. Just is another company which is doing well, which
Right.
is in a, mayo and vegan egg. So
Right.
I think, Ashu, we have not even scratched the surface. Be it
Right.
Western world, we beat India. I think $1.3 trillion entire market is up for grabs.
Right.
And that's the size of the global meat industry. And
Right.
that excludes even the fish and the aquaculture industry.
Right.
So I mean to say, very importantly, it's up to the companies to come up with a product. The consumers are ready; they are
Right.
willing to make a shift. But are the products same tasting as meat? Probably better because you can always iterate and make it juicier, more flavorful than the real deal.
Right.
So are the products better than that? And what about the price parity? Is it at price parity or is it at a discount? If it
Right.
is a discount, the scale will get. So the fact is the entire market is open for disruption.
Right.
And this is not just us, which we are saying, we are getting this data and feedback from the global markets.
Right.
And we expect the change to come up fairly, even accelerate in the
Right.
months ahead. Yeah.
Interesting. Abhishek, my one question that I have, right? Now, when you talk of Indian market, right? I mean, we have a very large cultural ecosystem, right? I mean, and that's something that has carried for the longest time, right? I mean, we have communities which have never been meat eating, and which advocate ahimsa, like you had mentioned, right?
Sure.
All throughout, right?
Sure.
Now, when you look at the India market, for example, right? I mean, how do you look at it? Since how do you dissect it?
So
Are you looking at people who have never consumed to transition into consuming your product, or are you looking at people who are consuming it, right, and then shifting that, from that preference order to a new preference order, right? Which is your primary go-to right now? Which is the one you are communicating with, tackling, and trying to ensure is the first set of consumer for you?
Sure, sure. I think actually it's very, very clear. They are the meat eaters, and more so people who are flexitarian. There's a unique term which is coming up these days, flexitarians.
Right.
So I think flexitarian is not applicable in India because everyone is a flexitarian here. In India, people who identify themselves as meat eaters consume meat probably once or twice in a week in a meal. So
Right.
that's not meat eater by a traditional definition. You go to US, you go to China, everyone who is a meat eater eats probably 3 times a day, 7 times a week. So
Right.
that's a meat eater by definition. So that is a target audience we are looking at, meat eaters who know the taste of meat, who can really appreciate what we are bringing on the table, both in
Right.
terms of taste, nutrition, and price. So I think very clearly the meat eaters and who are open to try out new options. I think those are the target groups what we are looking at. Yeah.
Right. Abhishek, you've consistently highlighted pricing, right, as one of the key aspects
Yeah.
of the entire game, right? I
Yeah.
want to talk to you more about pricing, right? So from what we get in retail markets, right, when we're talking about GoodDot, right, what is the pricing differentiation that you will?
So yeah, so there's a spectrum of products we have got, right? One, suppose the lamb replacement is around, for a retail person, it's around 600 rupees a kg, which
Right.
comes in a 250-gram packet,
Sure.
shelf stable. Does not require refrigeration, and the shelf life is 1 year, and that too
Oh,
without any preservative.
right.
Right. So that is the range. So if you look at mutton rates, boneless mutton, normal mutton will be around 450 to 500 in North India, right down up to 1100 in Tamil Nadu. And
Right.
boneless mutton will be at 700 to 1200. So
Right.
we are at the bottom end of the mutton replacement in terms of the meat mutton replacement. So we have a product called Protease. So a lot
Mhm.
of five stars are using that product as a mock chili chicken alternative, and it can also make excellent egg burji. So that comes more in a dehydrated form, in a protein form. You have to hydrate it like soy chunks, but as per the recipe, if you make, the price is probably to the end consumer is 100 rupees a kg, 110 rupees a kg upon
Right.
hydration. So
Right.
you see from 110 rupees a kg product or 120 rupees a kg product up to 600 rupees a kg of product. So that's the entire spectrum. And we are working hard despite the steep increase in commodity pricing,
Right.
be it soybean, be it pea protein, be it oils, almost 100% prices have increased. So we have
Right.
not proportionately increased our price of products, but we expect as volumes increase, the prices to go down further.
Very interesting. Abhishek, typically, one common, thing that you come across, right, when you talk to meat or eating audience, right, is for example, the protein content that you get out of it, right? Is
Yeah,
all the nutritional value that you get out of
sure,
it, right? Which is of
sure,
course relatively higher than consuming vegetarian food, right? And I think
sure.
there are many studies that are there. There are many conversations that are going on in that front, right? How do you look at that, right? I mean, and when you compare yourself with the actual meat, right? How does this substantiate that requirement for, say, a certain protein pill, and other such nutrients that are required?
Sure, sure. So basically, in terms of protein content, and that's not just our case, it's a global phenomena. You look at plant-based meat, the protein content is more or less at par with the real meat,
Okay,
right? So it's around 23 to 25 gram per 100 gram of product. There's the protein content. So
right,
similar to meat, probably a bit more than meat.
right.
Having said that, in terms of there are two very clear advantages over meat in terms of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
One is there's a zero cholesterol. Being a
Right,
plant-based origin, the cholesterol levels are zero across all plant-based meat products in the world.
right,
Second is they have very high dietary fiber.
right,
And meat has got zero dietary fiber, so it causes constipation and all kind of problems. So
right.
plant-based products have got very high dietary fiber. In fact, they have more dietary fiber than even green leafy vegetables.
Right.
तो उसमें so having said that, we believe that it's very very important that one drawback I would say with plant-based meat is absence of vitamin B12, which is
Right.
normally in animal-based products. So some of our products like Proteus Plus are fortified with vitamin B12. So
Mm-hmm.
you can take some supplements, or we can even go for fortification on our product for vitamin
Right.
B12. But other than that, I think there are no antibiotics, there are no growth hormones. So there are so many positives which are there in a plant-based meat as compared to nutritionally to animal meat.
Interesting. Abhishek, one thing that I want to kind of highlight, and I want you to highlight, right? Is that food in India is massive conversation, right? People
Yeah.
talk about food all the time, right? I mean, that's like the common constant across each household, right?
Yeah.
What are we
Yeah.
eating? What are we eating? When are we eating? How are we eating? Right? I mean, these are like common constants. आज घर में क्या खाना है, right? As simple as that, right? How difficult is it to communicate an audience which is set in its own way, right? And we are, like I mentioned earlier, right? I mean, we pass on our cultural consumption habits, right? So somebody from, say, in Uttar Pradesh will have a very typical habit. Somebody from, say, Madhya Pradesh will have a very typical eating habit, right? Down south is going to be
Right.
typical, north is going to be
Sure.
typical. You know what I mean, right? It's a fairly
Yeah. Yeah.
complex way.
I get you.
How difficult is communication of creating? I mean, what you're doing is extremely disruptive. This is something which not a lot of people are thinking about, right?
Yeah.
How difficult is that process to, that mind shift? How difficult is that?
I think it's extremely difficult at two levels. Ashu, it's very difficult at two levels. First of all, I think the most important thing is in the product itself.
Right.
So it's the onus squarely lies on the companies to create a product. It's not up to the consumers to, I would say, catalyze the movement to plant-based.
Right.
If you don't meet the taste expectations, there's no disruption which is going to happen. However much you can brand, however much you can claim, however you can surmise, nothing will happen. Right. So I think first and foremost is the product. So every company in the space has to keep working, innovating, and stepping up the game in the
Right.
plant-based meat. The best part is it's always iterative. You can always make better and better versions. So
Right.
if your earlier version is accepted, you very well know the later version will be accepted even more. So that's the first point. Second is communication. Yes. How do you communicate? And this is not just a messaging. Eating is believing. People say
Right.
seeing is believing. I think in food habits, eating is believing.
Right.
So it's not just what you communicate. That will require a lot of money to create an awareness. Brand endorsements out there in talking to influencers, letting people know something like this is there and which is for real. So that's one thing. So that is a capital intensive thing which can be done. Of course, how do you make people eat it? In a form in which you want them to taste it.
Right.
So that is why our aggressive plan for GoodDo outlets, wherein you'll be surprised to know we are giving a one unmutton keema pav at a price point of 29 bucks.
Right.
So you can get 29 bucks at a price point of a dabeli or a vada pav. You're getting a mutton keema pav. So we are giving them an offer which they cannot refuse. I mean to say there's no harm in trying.
Right.
I mean to say there's no harm in trying for them. And it is not costing you a bomb. It's just 29 bucks. Give it a shot. If you like it, then we talk. If you don't like it, then there's no game out here.
Right.
So this is where we are focusing on. We are taking the onus on ourselves, taste as well as price. Communication, we have raised funds, so we'll create some brand awareness to make some noise to say that, okay, we are there, do give it a shot.
Interesting. And, Abhishek, typically when you're looking at an environment like this, right? Uh, I think India is a market. I'm specifically talking India because it's one of the most complex markets when it comes to food, right? To operate it, right? I mean, if you can operate in India, I think you can operate in pretty much I think any other country, right? I want to how difficult is the supply chain, right? In an environment like this, right? How difficult is supply chain? Also the fact that we have extremely different consumer preferences all across, right? So east, west, north, south are completely different, right? How have you solved for that particular thing, right? And what's the construct of the manufacturing unit? I mean, what's the entire process?
So yeah, actually, I think that's a very relevant point. And again, you're going back to your earlier question, which I didn't think I addressed completely. Dietary habits are very different. What people eat in south, east, west, even in the same state, different parts of the state is very different. So
Right.
in order to solve that, from a product perspective, we have a ready to eat format again, which is specific, but we also have a ready to cook format. So we have chunks of meat. You cook it in the South Indian style, Bengali style, Gujarati style, Rajasthani style. So that addresses some part of that particular question, which is a versatile. For example, chicken. Chicken tastes the same whether it's south or north, but how you make it, we leave it to consumers. So we have some products which takes care of the versatility of the cooking. So that's one. Secondly, we were quite lucky in terms of our exposure to India level, pan India level customer exposure. You'll be surprised to know we have a partnership with RCM. RCM is a direct selling network with 7,500 plus stores all across India, primarily in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So
Interesting.
you would be surprised to know our product you can buy from the Naxal infested area of Dantewada up to Nagaland, Manipur, Jammu Kashmir in the villages because
Right.
of RCM. And we have seen the acceptance of the product. Our largest selling states are Bihar, Bengal, Telangana, Kerala, Northeast. So which are
Interesting.
heavy meat eating place. So that is the kind of data, the kind of exposure we have had. It's by chance. It was not by design that we went for those. Our distribution channel was probably in those spaces. So that gives us so much confidence. We are saying that India is a dark horse of the space,
Right.
and in 1 year, I think the world will really understand what we are talking about.
That's where it gets interesting, right? When you're talking to somebody who's been through the civil services,
Yeah.
the entire spectrum, right? And I think I like the way you cut it. But tell me this, Abhishek, what's working for you when you talk to India, right? India is extremely price sensitive country, right? And I
Yeah.
think we discovered this in our conversation, right? That
Yeah.
you were able to do it at least at a 30% discount broadly, right?
Yeah.
Basically the regular meals, right?
Yeah.
Is pricing factor working for you, or if there is or you think it's education, right, where people are kind of now educated, they want to be, they're more sensitive to the cause, and when you say that this is plant-based meat, people are going out and ready to experiment, right? I mean, what are the repeats like, right? I mean, and what's the overall offtake of the product across these regions? What's the repeat? What are the numbers that you are looking at there?
Yeah, sure. So like in terms of volume, we are selling close to 25,000 units of our product daily all
All right.
across India. So
Okay.
around 75,000 people are consuming our products on a daily basis.
Right.
So and that too without any branding and marketing till date. Now we are going to push the pedal. So that accept, and there is a repeat customer. We have the entire customer data. There are repeat purchases which are happening. So
Right.
our struggle is only to reach the customer first time in a format we need to go. So we might have some customer acquisition cost, but the lifetime value of the customer is exponential. It's a grocery item. It's a pantry item. So it's a repeat purchase, and there are no other alternatives for them to buy. The global products are frozen, refrigerated at a premium. That will
Right.
not work in India. That will. So I mean to say, there are different markets. India is
Right.
not a monolithic market where you
Absolutely.
want to go. If you are going to the masses, price sensitivity, taste, of course. In meat, India may anyone who eats meat eats for taste. If
Right.
someone is telling that they're eating for any other reason, I think they are in the minority. By and
Right.
large, the maximum majority they eat for taste. So
Right.
you have to match the taste. So that's a no-brainer. That's a starting point of the conversation. If you're not matching the taste, then it's a different niche product, which will have a market, but it will have a different messaging, but limited market. So you have to
Interesting.
crack the taste. So that's the first thing. Once you crack the taste, I think in India, if a brand has to work, price point will come very, very close second. So
Right.
you have to sell it possibly at a discount, else at least at par with meat for people to try. I'm not saying people will not try if you have the pluses
Right.
advantage of plant-based meat, but then you have some headwinds. You
Sure.
can still sail through. But if you have the taste and price right, then tailwinds are behind you.
No, I particularly like the fact that you're doing retail, right? You're going retail where you created the subsidiary and you're
Yeah,
formats for this.
Yeah.
And I'll come to that in
Yeah.
just a bit, right? But Abhishek, one thing that I want to actually sort of talk to you, right, is more around the legal aspects of it, right? And given the
Yeah.
sensitivity that we have around food, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a constant challenge, right? And we've
Sure.
seen a lot of ruckus as well, right?
Right.
You're operating in pretty much a middle zone, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How has that been for you, right? From a legal standpoint, right? I mean, how do
Sure.
you define your product? Are there very clear, laid out pieces?
Yeah.
As by say
Yeah.
BIS and a bunch of other institutions that
Yes,
regulate.
yes, they're quite clear guidelines. I think initially we come under proprietary food, which are not under any particular category. And
Okay.
the best part is the ingredients whatever is being used are accepted. There are general ingredient across all the products: soy
Right.
protein, pea protein, gram flour, quinoa flour. So there's nothing gray about the ingredients what we are using.
Right.
For example, Coca-Cola, right?
Right.
That's a totally different chemical-based product, but all those chemicals are passed. FSI individually has approved all those chemicals, but in this case, we are using plant proteins. All of them are being used in
Right.
different products. So we are just amalgamating in a different form. We could have called it some kurkure, we could have called it anything, it would have worked. So
Right.
we are telling it as a plant-based meat because it resembles in taste and texture like plant-based meat.
Very interesting. Abhishek, I'm going to talk to you about the retail format, right? Which
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned, right, in the process.
Yeah.
And these are format stores that you're kind of opening up, right? And where
Yeah.
it's like a restaurant-like setting that you're kind of. I mean,
Not just a restaurant. We have opened thelas. We have opened
no, I'm saying
thelas, and people have loved it. Just thelas out there. Our restaurants are
interesting.
also there. Kiosks are also there. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, typically, when you look at what you're doing, right, as largely as a company, right, where you're working on plant-based, right, getting into any such layer of distribution essentially means that you're carrying and you're kind of building a lot of weight in your feet. I mean, I understand where you
Yeah.
are, right? You need to evangelize the cause. People need to go out and experiment there, right? But experimenting is one, and then building a business which is like literally retail, right? Is a very different ballgame, right? The
Yeah.
matrix of the game completely changed, right? What made you do that? I mean, what was the logic behind that?
So yeah, that was not a plan. That's why a subsidiary company. That was,
Right,
it has become a subsidiary company. That is not a part of GoodDot. Now it's a part of GoodDot.
right,
So having said that, initially, as I said earlier, we went for upstream product, chunks of meat, right? They are chunks of meat, but they happen to be plant based.
right,
What has happened, like we got 70% positive review and 30% negative reviews from
right,
some of the paying consumers. So when
right,
we dive deeper, either our product is good or it's not good. So
right,
why some people are saying it's not good? So when we dive deeper, we realize that they're not cooking it the way it should be cooked. They think it's
right.
pre-cooked. Agar aapke paas mutton rehta, you undercook it, you won't get the taste, you won't get the masala.
Right,
So what we did, we launched a first food truck in Udaipur with a
right,
finished format. We made tikkas, biryanis, wraps, burgers, everything out of our base product.
right,
And incidentally, that food truck won world's #2 award by Lonely Planet. So
right.
that is sensational. The
Wow.
top 10 are either American, French, or Brazilian and
Right.
Australia. We are the only representative from India, and we are
Wow.
#2 there. So that validated us. Udaipur being a tourist city, people from 17 franchisee requests from India and 4 out of India was received in the very first 3 months of
Wow.
that particular food truck.
Right.
We thought, hang on, there's something serious which is going on here, and it's only going to help GoodDot. So,
Right.
go to the consumer in a form which is we want it to go.
Right.
So then we formed a separate company. Abhinav came in and then he led that company. He still leads that company. And now we are very aggressive. COVID, we are doing fantastic, but again, 1.5 hour COVID of the retail outlet, I think there was a lot of problems initially, but now
Right.
again we are back on our feet and the numbers are coming back to normal. And the expansion plan is quite ambitious for that particular. Yeah.
Abhishek, you walked into my next question, right? Which is essentially around distribution, right?
Yeah.
Traditionally distribution was very different, right? In a
Yeah.
2019 kind of an environment, right? And in a 2020 kind of environment, post 2020 actually.
Yeah.
I think it's completely changed, right?
Yeah.
Right, because I think COVID has kind of changed, right? So two questions essentially. One, how was the period of COVID for you? Because I think while of course there was problem and devastation on one side of it, right? There were a lot of
Yeah.
people who were essentially at home, and I think everybody sort of became a chef, right? At least to a certain degree, right? How was that phase for you, right? Did that work as an experimentative period where people were available. You could go out, communicate, they could consume, right? How did
Sure.
that shape up? I think that's number one. Number two is, what's going to be the distribution for format going forward, right? Is there going to be a D2C play that you're building, right, where people are, you're essentially enticing them to come to your website, where you kind of say, incentivizing them for that relationship that you're building with them? What's that? How is that coming along?
Sure, sure. So I think COVID, I think we can clearly divide into two phases, COVID one and COVID two,
Right.
right? So COVID one was, stupendous for us. We immediately, our sales doubled month on month.
Right.
It was, phenomenal exposure. I think
Right.
a lot of people, looked at, because what happened was, it didn't impact at a family level the extent COVID two impacted. So,
Right.
people were at home, but they were healthy, by and large, fairly healthy, not, balancing too many medical emergencies at that moment of time. So that helped us increase our sales. And that also significantly increased during the first and second COVID. A lot of organic DTC sales happened.
Right.
As a brand, we never focused on DTC. Because we have trying to build up our retail channel, but that made us, sit up and take notice and say, hang on, people are demanding this. I think we better get our game on point. So we are, with this fundraise, we are totally focusing very strongly on DTC, building up a brand, getting consumer data, expanding our footprint across. So that is a focus area, I think, for the time being.
Right.
And COVID 2, yes, COVID 2 for the next 4 months, I think even our entire distribution chain was, affected. Being a lot of people in the depots, sub depots, they were suffering from our own personal losses. So
Right.
that impacted, even though the sales happened, but it was not to the extent which was happening post COVID 1. But
Right.
now I think again numbers are back to normal, and those are sustained numbers. So what we had seen a spike in COVID 1 is sustained, and we are increasing every month. So that means that is again a parallel track. So there are some things in terms of consumer awareness of plant-based meat or healthy food products. Secondly, our product during COVID time, they didn't require refrigeration. They were on shelf in a pantry for 12 months. So people will stock up their pantry. And if you have to eat meat, you don't get fresh stores open, or otherwise your refrigerator space is limited. You can store only so much. So
Right.
that so many new customers joined in. So it was an interesting experience, and it only, if you look into totality, that has helped. Both COVID and COVID 2, it has increased our sales in totality. Yeah.
Abhishek, one question that I have, right, and that is typically anybody who's into, say, a new category, right,
Yeah.
which is for example like a category that the kind of one that
Yeah.
you're building, right,
Yeah.
or anybody who's in the input side of things, right, typically B2B becomes a very large part of the trade, right, and I think that also becomes a very strong foundation because of the volume turnovers that you get, right,
Yeah.
right. What percentage of sales is essentially coming from a B2B environment, and what percentage of sales is coming from a B2C environment currently?
So yeah, B2B, I think recently, Domino's has started using our product in the Unthinkable Pizza. So,
Okay.
they have rolled across 150 to 200 stores in 3 cities. So
Right.
that's a good validation for us as a product. So
Right.
Marriott as a chain has done some corporate tie-up with us across all its properties.
Right.
So that is again an interesting validation. So Metro Cash and Carry is starting to carry our products. So we are in talks with the Reliance, to put in Reliance Retail and Big Bazaar. So
Right.
for the modern trade. Again, Namdharis in Bangalore has started keeping up. So those things are happening. Right now, I would say, still, I think around 90% of our sales are happening in B2C channel, and 10% I would say in B2B. Because food service was impacted in COVID 1, COVID 2. So now we have formed teams to really, and now things are opening up. Exports, very incidentally, like we are so lucky that we got so many validations outside India that this product is not just India ready, it's a globe ready. And that's our answer to the Beyond Meats and Impossible of the world, and we are holding our own in so many places.
Very interesting. Abhishek, which has been the best performing region? I mean, I know it's a difficult one, right? But which has been the best performing region, right, in India and outside, right? Which is you completely flabbergasted you, right? That this is not something that you expected, and it's a region which is kind of picked up, and it's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Bihar, Bengal. I think they have the interiors of that. Somehow it is on fire.
Right.
Who would have thought plant-based meat? Yeah,
Right.
there. So, and again, Kerala, Northeast. I think, but primarily, I think by and large, the biggest selling state consumer of plant-based meat is the rural area of Bihar. Can you beat that? So you are flabbergasted.
Very
Huh? You're talking about Bangalore's and Mumbai's and Delhi's, and here is they are accepting plant-based meat. They like their mutton. So that's a great eye opener. And me personally coming from Bihar, that's such a pleasant surprise.
but but
Outside India, oh yeah,
but
yeah.
but
Sorry.
did you get a chance to go there and really see people in action saying that why are you buying it? I have a question in my mind. Did you do that?
Yeah, actually, we tend to underestimate the consumers in
Right,
so many parts of the country. They are
right,
much more intelligible. They are much more aware. In fact, I think a lot of people are mistaking the metros for the major markets. I think they are spoiled for
right,
choices, not in the
right.
plant-based meat. But you think about, a healthy food
Each other.
products. There is a glut of products. How do you, and they are spoiled for choices. They'll only purchase one, but there are 10 brands vying for their attention. But you go to Jammu Kashmir, you go to Northeast, you go to Bihar, you go to Chhattisgarh, no one is going there. And
Right,
they're waiting. They're also aspirational. This is a TikTok age. This is a Reels age. Everyone is as strong as a guy out there in Mumbai or a Bangalore.
right.
So they want that. So I think a lot of FMCG companies need to relook their orientation. I think there is definitely wealth at the bottom of the pyramid. I think there's a wealth also at the middle of the pyramid. We should not just focus on the top. I mean, it's by chance I said, if you would have told me how it would have played out, I would have gone for the metros first with
Right.
GoodDot and then dreamt about the villages. It so
Right.
happened that we started with villages, now we are going to metros.
Interesting. Abhishek, typically I have a question around Bharat, right? I'm not gonna do that. I think you answered quite a bit of that, right? And I think
Yeah,
I completely agree with what you're saying. I think we tend to underestimate how people are gonna adapt and adopt, right? I think
yeah,
that, and I think these are fairly savvy markets. And you're absolutely right in highlighting that, this is a market which is now moved on TikTok. So the exposure is very, very different, right? I mean, usually this is a question that I have for many people that I speak with, right? And I think here is that unusual occasion where we actually answered it upfront, right?
yeah,
Ashik, I'm going to move into my next question, right? Is that, this is something which requires a very sharp focused team, right? And I think team is essentially the only constant, I think, in any business, right? But in a business like this, where you're operating in an extremely specialized environment, you have to deliver a product par excellence. It's also a product which is coming out of your lab and then is going to be sitting on the rack for a very long time, even before it gets to, say, somebody's home and gets cooked and eaten and then,
yeah,
entire experience, right? It's a very long process, right? And this requires for an extremely sharp uh, team, right? For that entire running the entire process, right? How
yeah.
has the team construct been for you, right? I mean, I understand you highlighted about Abhinav, your brother, right, who comes with the right experience, right? But how has it been otherwise, right? Who are the other people in the team? How's the construct been?
Sure.
Uh, I think it'll be interesting.
So there are a lot of people. Like right now within the group, we are probably close to 180 of us.
Okay,
So it's a strong enough a team.
right,
In terms of Deepak, who's my co-founder, I think he brings in a lot of operational and financial experience. He was a
correct,
CFO of the largest tobacco company of Rajasthan, Miraj, at a young age, a CA and a CS gold medalist, and he
right,
has deep operational experiences. So he understands numbers, he understands scale. I think
right,
without him at the back, managing the numbers, the volumes, I think, and the systems in place, I think he brings in a lot of those strengths. Then there's Shruti, who's my sister. She's more from a culinary background.
right,
She has had a lot of exposure in the hotel industry as well as running her own businesses. So a lot of culinary development part went into that. Harish, again, who is heading GoodDot Spices, he has had a previous business in spices. So India is not just about meat; it's also about the spices. So if you give them in a convenient format to a consumer, I think there's a winner out there. So he brings in a lot of those unique abilities,
right,
which then there are, there's a Praveen, there's Pradeep, the guys who are bringing in some of the technical quality control experiences. Then we have some mechanical engineers who are more, in the, I think the equipment side of, their strengths. Of course, there are marketing and other backend guys who are also working. So right now in the corporate office, there are around 40, 45 people, and in the other places, 120, 130. So there we have a big team with now diversified portfolio, with
Abhishek,
specialized other portfolio.
my sense is, when many people who are going to watch this interview, right, are essentially going to be under impression that you are a company which is either operating out of a Bangalore or a Bombay or a Delhi or a Hyderabad, right? And I think it's going to be largely that. Um,
Yeah,
Not a lot of people know that you're operating out of Udaipur, right? And I have a whole set of questions on that, right? Why, of course, the choice of Udaipur, right? And second, you talked about the team, right? How difficult was it to bring that team together in a city like Udaipur, right? I mean, Udaipur has been known for its beauty
Yeah.
and a very different kind of a life, right? It's not a life where it's very different, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're not you're
absolutely.
not you're not you're not a very different kind of a chase, right?
I think
What
yeah,
made you
you're right. Ashu, in this case, I'll give, I'll add to a question. First, I'll answer and then add to a question. Of course, a lot of people are surprised. A lot of VCs, Ps are surprised that Udaipur say kuch innovation and that too in manufacturing real hardcore and that to a government servant. Come
right?
on, you better be joking. You know, so all the global players are reaching out to
Right,
us to see how we can collaborate. And I say,
right,
you guys have everything. Why do you need us? He said, you
right,
have the passion. So I think it's a divine grace, it's a hard work of the team, and also some serendipity that things happen. So for a lot of interesting things happen very organically. When
right,
you start out, you don't envision you'll reach a scale, you don't envision the success. The worth of the effort what you are putting in. So
right,
that we knew, and the team was very, very clearly defined in terms of the output. This is a war we are fighting on behalf of animals. There's
right,
no going back. Either if we win or we fight. That's the
right,
only thing. So that's what we envision. And just to add to it, this is India. So of course, the big city boys, the big boys, look down upon the small boys. So that's understandable. But when there was an interesting anecdote. We were invited among the top 7 plant protein brands by Temasek Holdings and
right,
Singapore Economic Development Board for Singapore. That
right,
was, in Grand Hyatt, Singapore. That was the annual sourcing dinner, and
right,
where they had invited the top food brands across Southeast Asia and China. And there, we performed, we were along Impossible Food, Just, Perfect Day, Miyoko's, Like Meat from Germany, and GoodDot.
right,
Here, GoodDot was there from Udaipur, so to say. And someone was asking, oh, plant-based meat from India.
right,
Oh, that's interesting. So they look down upon India. So
right,
we are not here, we are battling the big boys of the big cities, and outside India, I'm batting on behalf of India. That, okay, we can also deliver. Now you
right,
see our product and they liked our product, they signed a LOI with us. So that was a great. Incidentally, I'll just add another anecdote, which we have not shared a lot,
right,
is that there's this event called Parliament of World Religion. The
right,
first parliament happened in 1893, Chicago, where Swami Vivekananda gave the speech.
right,
So the first time in 125-year history of Parliament, official vegan banquet was held by Charter for Compassion.
uh-huh,
And every company was asked to pitch their product. We pitched our product, and we were selected among every player. And we were exclusively served in Toronto, Canada. And we even got a chance to address the Parliament.
wow,
So I think it's serendipitous. We have
right.
worked hard, but as I said, God has been kind, and we take His kindness in our stride. Yeah.
That is incredible, right?
Yeah.
Abhishek, tell me this, right? So I had a question on the team as well, right? How difficult was it for the team to come together? Making a choice of a tier two city. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, right? I mean, you're not really anticipating the kind of growth that you're going to see, right? And but how difficult is it to get the team together, right? It's just so difficult. You don't get the
It's difficult.
right
It's
talent at the
not everyone wants to come here in Udaipur and work. You create something. Think about Kota.
sure,
Think about Kota, the Bansals, right? They created the entire city around that.
right,
See, it passion attracts. There are a lot of guys who have come from the big cities and joined at the initial level from Delhi, from
right,
Mumbai. They have come and joined the team because we went out there. We said,
right,
okay, guys, look at this. This is our background. This is the plan. This is the structured way we are going to go ahead. Do you believe us? Then join us. They believed. Some of them, of course, you rightly said, it will be difficult to, move down to. They can't see what we are seeing because
right,
probably we also didn't know where we're going to reach. We know this is a journey worth going for, but we didn't know where we'll end up in like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We didn't know that.
right.
So thankfully, things worked out, and those guys are the happiest. Now with COVID, even from the big cities, people want to come down. I said, now wait, we'll take the call. Who gets to work here? So it is what it is, and Udaipur, strategically also because. Deepak was from Udaipur. I was posted in Udaipur. Our distribution partner, their national warehouse is in 1.5 hour away from Udaipur. So we operate at zero inventory. We manufacture, we ship our product to the warehouse, and then the entire distribution is taken care by them. So that takes us a lot of challenges away from our head.
Right,
Secondly, it's Udaipur is in the middle of the highway connecting Delhi and
right,
Mumbai, the national highway connecting Delhi and Mumbai. So
right,
both markets are equidistant from Udaipur,
right,
just 12 hour distance away, I can say. So that really helps. And again, soybean, which is one of the major raw materials we have got, is either
Right.
in the Kota belt or in the Indore belt, which is again not very far off from Udaipur. So it is serendipitous, but we love it. We love it being here. Yeah.
Very interesting. Abhishek, how I very sincerely believe this is going to be such a motivating story for many tier two entrepreneurs, right? I think
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
constantly in a battle to justify their, choice of market where they operate out of, right? And typically what's expected out of, I think anybody is that, they're going to move closer to say a Bangalore and, like I said, right, a Delhi, right? Because our understanding of adoption is that if adoption is happening there, it's basically top down, right? So the top markets are going to consume first, and it's going to eventually trickle down, right? Because there's certain affiliation, there's a certain reference point, and so forth, right? And other
Yeah,
markets catch up to that aspiration, right?
yeah.
But I think the way you are possibly cutting it, the way you are looking at it is extremely different, and and more importantly, what you experience in terms of adoption, right? I think is absolutely phenomenal. It just states a very different narrative, right, about how we are as an economy, right? And cannot be,
Yeah.
we can't paint it with one brush, saying that this is a
No, 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 and that's all our problem. We feel. I think that's the problem. I think entrepreneurship. I'll be deviating from our journey. It's a generic comment which I make is entrepreneurship is about making money. But if it is without any meaning, I think that will create a lot of headaches. So I mean to say, ki first believe in a need which is real and scalable and
right,
see if you have a solution. Will
right,
you be a consumer? Will you be a consumer of the service or the product you're offering for
right.
the price point you're offering? If it is not, whether you move to Delhi, Bangalore, or you stay in Udaipur, nothing will work.
You know,
But
I
if, yeah, sorry.
I was in a conversation, right,
Yeah,
and there's somebody who was doing something in Bangalore, and my point was that India is not larger Bangalore, right?
yeah,
It has its own nuances, it has its own preference orders, and you'll have to really understand India at a very different level if you have to create a company which is scalable, right?
yeah.
And I
You
think I
don't
kind of agree with
create, you actually you don't create a company. Companies are created. It's a luck thing. Hard work everyone does. But if the journey is meaningful, if it makes sense to you, I think even if a smaller success, you are happy. I
right.
think we are giving too much importance to the fundraise. We are giving too much importance to being successful or unicorn status. I think it's good. You take it. If you're on the right journey, it comes great. If it does not, at least make your journey meaningful, which is in your control.
Right.
Otherwise, there's too much pressure. You won't be surviving, entrepreneurial journey. There's too much pressure.
Interesting. Abhishek, I ideally wanted you to give this, this, this
Yeah,
yarn, right, towards the
yeah.
end of the conversation. But I'm gonna
Don't
move
worry. I
into
have a lot of gyan. I can keep on throwing.
no,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move into the last question, right? It was the end of the
Okay.
conversation. Right? What are the next
Okay.
2 years like, right? You've recently raised capital, right, from Six Ventures. Um, what's the next 2 year plan, right? Where will we see GoodDot in the next 2 years? I think I would have wanted 5 years. I think just too long a period, right? I think 2 years is. I think India's become a different
Yeah.
market post-COVID.
Yeah, 2 years, we think, by and large, we should be by a long shot, the biggest plant-based meat company, the
Right.
hottest food startup in India. I think
Interesting.
that is in India. Outside India, we have to be a serious player in USA and
Right.
UK market. I think those are important markets for us. I think we will be entering them in the next 3 to 4 months. That's the plan. So
Right.
we have to be, in fact, we are being sold alongside Beyond Meat in Africa by Infinite Foods, and we are holding our own, and the sales numbers
Right.
are pretty good. So I mean to say, we know our worth. I think if we should focus on branding a bit more and some new product launches. So these are the two areas where we are looking at, and yeah, just crack it up. I think uh, like short term we might overestimate, but 2 year, 3 years timeline, I think whatever I will be saying, I'll be underestimating where we'll end up.
Very interesting. And how many people would you have touched, right? And how many people would you have shifted from being non-vegetarians into plant-based meat?
At least I would say 3 million minimum.
Interesting.
Because right now we have already had a scheme called the goodness mission, wherein we have offered certificate to people who have taken the pledge, and they have been consumers, and they have shifted from meat eating to vegetarian. They have taken the oath of vegetarianism. So around 100,000 people have already enrolled for that. So in
Very
just without any branding. Yeah.
Abhishek, my last question to you, right? On the Gyan side of things, right?
Yeah.
You've been you've been at it, right? There are certain choices that you've made, right? You've stood by your choices, right? You left your job, a government job, right? Which is, like I said right at the start, it's a coveted sort of a
Yeah.
place, right?
Yeah.
To stand by your cause, right?
Yeah.
You gave a flavor of what you believe in, right? But what is your, say, that one piece of advice to any founder, right? Who's driven, who's working, right? How to stay focused, right? How to ensure that you absorb the right things from what's happening around you. There are people who are going to challenge you, the people who are going to question you, right? And I want specifically you to answer, because you've chosen to do something that never existed, right? Not in the formal way, right? Which is literally against the tide. What will that one advice be, right? For many people who stop from trying, give up in the process, right? What will that one advice be?
Life is not easy. Just accept it. Life is not easy, will never be easy. That's the nature of life. So that's one thing. In that backdrop, I want to just say that life can be meaningful.
Right.
So before you enter the entrepreneurial journey, I think see what really moves you from a very deep level. And once you identify that, there will be a lot of business ideas around that.
Right.
There will be a lot of monetizable opportunities around that. Find it and work on it. If you're not enjoying the space, I think entrepreneurship is not for you. Probably it is for you, but I think you're not on the right business.
Right.
So I think you have to. Otherwise, you exit, you make some money out of the business, then dive into something which you really believe in, which you feel it needs to be done. And in
Right.
India, thankfully, there are so many problems to solve. And every problem, for example, just take a toilet, right?
Right.
You go to a market, right? There are ladies who want to use a washroom, but you just have Sulabh Sauchalaya. Why
Right.
not have a chain of toilet, fancy and charge $100 and all that, and you can make money out of it.
Right.
Street food, hygienic street food, so many bad elements are using, bad ingredients, there's so many, I can name it, you can give me an, problem, I can make an idea out of it. And there are so many, think about it. And that will help you sustain through the challenges of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Because even you don't reach the destination, you'll enjoy the journey. And eventually, if you're at it, God will suddenly start showering his blessings and you will be successful.
Abhishek, thank you so much for taking the time out. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, right?
Yeah, man.
I think,
Yeah.
I think there are a few entrepreneurs that you come across, right, who have that, that stubbornness required to change the way people consume, right?
Yeah.
And in a very good way, and in a very good way.
Yeah.
And I think that is possibly also what you highlight, like that.
Yeah.
This is what is needed, right? I mean, if you add it, then
Yeah.
you are at it, right? I was in
Yeah.
a conversation recently, Abhishek, right?
Okay.
A very dear friend, Deep Bajaj, right?
Right.
Of Peabody, right? He said he has a 1,000-day rule, right?
Okay.
And what he essentially meant was that, whatever you pick and choose, be at it for 1,000 days, right? There are a lot of things that are going to, be moving around you. It's not going to be a happy day every day. It's going to be a difficult phase, right? But be at it. And I think that's essentially what you are
Yeah.
also
Absolutely.
highlighting, right? And kind of pointing towards, right? That just
Yeah.
be at it, right? And I think
And
that's very
just Ashu, like we are talking about reality, hardcore, brutal reality out here.
right,
COVID has very clearly exposed it.
right,
Anyone, be it of any health, any age group, any economic strength, your life can just be about a matter of 4 or 5 days, right? Make it meaningful, because we have enough problem in this world when people are thinking short term.
sure.
Think about how you would like to feel on your deathbed, whether you have made at least tried making and achievements. Yes, they help you, but I think internal locus of control and making an effort which you really believe in, I think that's the biggest prize any entrepreneur can get.
Interesting. Abhishek, it
Yeah.
was thoroughly a pleasure to have you. I look forward to having you with us soon.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think there are a few people you always want to keep talking to, right? How I want this session not to end, right?
No, I
But
enjoyed
thank
it.
you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time out. It was a pleasure to have you.
Same, Ashu. Thank you so much. It was a fantastic. I love the flow of the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.